The only thing hotter than the air was the glare from the 8-foot-tall guard captain, and Jace Keller was reasonably certain only one of them was technically a violation of the Geneva Conventions. He wiped a bead of sweat from his temple before it could sizzle. The air tasted of sulfur and scorched ambition, which, in his experience, was the official scent of any diplomatic posting worth avoiding. "Look," Jace said, forcing a placid smile that felt like it was melting off his face. "Captain Vorn, is it? All I am requesting, per the Millendanus Accords, Article 4, Section 3, Subsection A, is a preliminary meeting space with adequate atmospheric filtration and a functioning nutrient dispenser, specifically one that can replicate Terran-style roasted bean infusion." Captain Vorn's stony, obsidian-like face didn't so much scowl as it geologically shifted. Her voice was a low rumble, the sound of stone shifting deep underground. "You are soft, human. Your shell is weak. You complain of our air. You ask for brown water." "It's called coffee," Jace muttered, "and it is the lifeblood of bureaucracy. Without it, civilizations crumble, paperwork goes unfiled, and the entire galactic order descends into a state of mild inconvenience, followed by severe logistical chaos." Vorn blinked a slow, disconcerting motion of a nicotinating membrane. "The Queen Mother will see you at the Feast of Pledges. You will stand in the Great Hall. You will breathe our air. If you faint, we will stack you with the other provisions." Jace's smile tightened. "Excellent. I'll just go file an official protest regarding the potential commingling of diplomatic personnel with foodstuffs. Form 74J, I believe. Hazardous contamination regulation." The guard captain simply turned her massive, plate-armored shoulders a clear dismissal. Jace sighed, the sound lost in the oppressive heat. Welcome to Pyrethia, the armpit of the galaxy. His assignment brief had described it as a geothermally active world with a robust, honor-based matriarchal society. Jace's translation, an apocalyptic volcano planet run by angry lava lizards who solved political disputes by hitting each other with things. And they didn't have a decent coffee machine anywhere. It was, in every conceivable way, hell. The Great Hall was less a room and more a hollowed-out volcano core. Obsidian walls soared into a smoky darkness, lit by flickering rivers of molten rock that flowed in recessed channels along the floor. The heat was a physical presence, a giant, unseen hand pressing down on Jace's dress uniform. The air was thick, carrying the metallic scent of blood wine and the sharp smell of superheated rock, vibrating with unspoken threats. Warlord matriarchs from the vassal clans stood in rigid, armored clusters, their glares as sharp as the ceremonial daggers at their hips. Jace, feeling distinctly like a soft-shelled snail at a hammer convention, tried to make himself small. He nursed a cup of the local lava ale, a viscous, faintly glowing liquid that tasted like battery acid and regret, and focused on his primary directive: observe, report, and do not, under any circumstances, get involved. His gaze drifted across the tense tableau. On the monolithic throne sat Queen Mother, a figure so ancient she seemed more geological feature than living being. Withered and frail, she watched the proceedings with eyes clouded by pain and resignation. Jace could see it instantly. She was too weak to enforce her will. A monarch bound by traditions that demanded the clans offer their fealty, not have it commanded. Her power had already faded, leaving a vacuum the other predators in the room were circling. And at the foot of the throne, in the center of that vacuum, sat the reason for it all: Princess Iskra. An invisible barrier of meters surrounded her. The other Pyrithians, so physically close to one another, gave her a wide berth, their avoidance a palpable force. He'd read the file, of course. Heir to the throne, grievously wounded in a disastrous military campaign against the guttural hive. a failure that had cost Pyrethia a chunk of its territory and a generation of warriors. In a society that worshipped strength, her scars were not a mark of honor, but a brand of shame. They traced a brutal, jagged pattern across the left side of her face, pulling at her eye and lip, marring the otherwise harsh, noble lines of her features. Her armor was immaculate, her posture ramrod straight, but the isolation was absolute. She was a ghost at her own feast. Jace felt an unwelcome pang of kinship. He, too, was an outcast here, the squishy, bureaucratic joke from a species of paper pushers. He took a deep, fortifying swig of the lava ale. It burned all the way down, incinerating any lingering shreds of professional caution. The Queen Mother rasped a command that was lost in the hall's tension. A courtier, a male with polished, decorative armor, approached the various clan leaders, trying to coax them into making pledges of fealty. He was met with stony silence. The silence in the hall deepened, pressing in. The air grew so thick, Jace felt he could have filed a report on it. Desperate to break the suffocating silence, the courtier's eyes landed on Jace. "The human diplomat!" he announced, his voice oozing false cheer. "Surely, our esteemed off-world guest would honor us with a traditional greeting, a toast to the royal house." Every helmeted head in the room swiveled to face him. Jace froze. This was the definition of getting involved. He was a mid-level functionary. His job was to be furniture. But refusing was not an option. That would be an insult. His mind, fuzzy from the potent ale, raced. He needed something respectful, formal, and utterly meaningless. He fumbled for his datapad, his fingers suddenly clumsy. He pulled up the cultural database for Pyrethia, frantically scrolling through the formal honorific section. Most were complex, multi-part pronouncements. He needed something short and impressive. His eyes landed on a phrase listed under archaic rites of veneration. It was poetic, sounded important, and seemed appropriately deferential. A perfect piece of diplomatic fluff. A human offering his name to a royal's line of future was just a flowery way of pledging support. A bit of respectful wordplay. He was actually proud of himself for finding it. He stood, swaying slightly. The lava ale was doing a number on his inner ear. He cleared his throat. "On behalf of the Terran Compact, I offer this tribute." He took a breath and recited the phrase from the screen, his voice ringing out with more confidence than he felt. "By the unquenched fire and the unbroken stone, I see the strength of your line and offer my name to its future." The words hung in the hot, silent air. Jace beamed, a sloppy, triumphant smile plastered on his face. He thought he'd nailed it. A perfect, poetic, and diplomatically safe non-answer. He'd shown respect without promising a single thing. He was a genius. Then he registered the expressions around him. The stunned disbelief, the slack-jawed shock on the faces of the most hardened warlords. The courtier looked like he was about to regurgitate his own spleen. The Queen Mother leaned forward, her ancient eyes wide with something other than resignation. And Princess Iskra, she was staring at him, not with contempt or anger, but with a look of piercing, analytical shock. The silence stretched, becoming a physical thing, a vacuum that sucked all the air from Jace's lungs. He didn't understand. What had he said? It was just some old-fashioned boilerplate, right? The hangover felt like a failed orbital re-entry. Jace's head was a debris field of pain, and his mouth tasted like a pleasure droid's armpit. As consciousness seeped back, his first coherent thought was bureaucratic. "These quarters are non-compliant. This is substandard mattress support, inadequate atmospheric refresh rate, and a complete lack of approved caffeinated beverage dispensers. I could file grievances for a year." A high-pitched, frantic sound drilled into this administrative haze. "Sir, Mr. Keller, sir, you have to wake up! Jace cracked an eye open. His aide, a perpetually terrified junior attaché named Miller, was hovering over his cot, wringing his hands. Miller's face was pale, which was impressive, considering he was already the color of bleached parchment. Miller, Jace groaned. Report. Did I file? Form 1138 subsection B for unauthorized fainting out of state of function? Sir, this is significantly worse than a procedural gaffe, Miller squeaked, his voice an octave higher than usual. Sir, you did something. I do lots of things, Miller. Mostly paperwork. It's my calling. Jace tried to sit up, but a wave of nausea sent him crashing back down. What's the damage? Did I insult the Queen's ceremonial hat? Did I use the wrong fork for the roasted grub larvae? You proposed marriage to the princess, sir. Jace's brain stalled. The words computed, but the meaning refused to land. I did what now? The Feast of Pledges, sir! It's not just for fealty! It's a traditional night where unbonded individuals can make formal declarations of union. Miller was hyperventilating now. And the phrase you used, sir, that wasn't just a toast. It was an archaic, but legally binding vow of betrothal. The memory returned in a sickening flash. The datapad, the archaic phrase, the stunned silence. I was just being polite, Jace whispered, the horror dawning. I was offering my name to her line's future. It's poetic. It means I support them. No, sir, it's not poetic. Miller's voice cracked. It's literal, sir. In their language, in their culture, offering a name to a line's future has only one meaning. To provide heirs. To offer your genetic legacy to continue their dynasty. You didn't pledge support. You pledged yourself. It's a direct, undeniable marriage vow. Jace stared at the ceiling of his sterile, non-compliant quarters. Oh no. Oh, yes, sir, Miller wailed. The entire capital is in an uproar. Every warrior in that hall has refused her. They see her as cursed. And then you, the off-worlder, stood up and made a most solemn vow in their history. To rescind it now would be an insult so profound they might just declare a war on humanity, or more likely just on you. They'd probably toss you into the nearest lava flow, sir, and then file a complaint. Jace closed his eyes. His career wasn't just over. His life was over. He was gonna die on a volcanic hell planet because of a catastrophic linguistic misinterpretation while blackout drunk on alien moonshine. There wasn't a form for this. There wasn't a regulation that could save him. It was the ultimate bureaucratic failure. A summons arrived an hour later, delivered by two guards who looked at him with a bizarre mixture of pity and awe. He was escorted not to the dungeons, but to the royal spire, the private domain of the Queen Mother and her heir. The corridors were silent, carved from the same polished obsidian as the throne room, but here they felt less menacing, and more like the arteries of some vast sleeping beast. He was led into a chamber that was surprisingly Spartan. A training dummy stood in one corner, scarred with 1,000 cuts. A rack of wickedly sharp weapons lined one wall, and by a large window overlooking the lava-lit capital, Princess Iskra stood waiting for him. She turned as he entered, and Jace braced himself for an eruption of royal fury. He expected to be berated, threatened, and possibly dismembered. Instead, she was utterly, terrifyingly calm. Her scarred face was impassive, her one unblemished eye studying him with an unnerving intensity. "Human," she said. Her voice was low, like cooling magma. "Jace Keller." "Your Highness," Jace managed, his throat dry. "Look, about last night, I can't begin to express the depth of my procedural oversight. It was a catastrophic cultural misunderstanding. I had consumed a quantity of lava ale that has been known to impair judgment in species with less robust livers. I am prepared to submit a full written apology in triplicate. Iskra took a step closer. She was even taller up close, a column of disciplined muscle and scarred pride. You think I have summoned you for an apology? Well, yeah. That, or to personally use my intestines as a ceremonial garland. I was hoping for the apology option. A flicker of something, was it amusement, crossed her features. Your blunder, human, has caused more chaos in this court in one night than I have managed in 5 years of careful political maneuvering. The clan matriarchs are in disarray. My mother's advisors are apoplectic. They saw me as a political dead end, a broken relic to be quietly set aside. She paused, her gaze unwavering. And then you, the fragile, soft-shelled diplomat that everyone dismissed as a harmless fool, stood up in front of all of them and bound your name to mine. Your blunder was the boldest, most insane political statement this court has seen in generations. Jace stared at her, dumbfounded. But it was a gaffe, a world-ending, career-immolating gaffe. Reality is irrelevant, she stated, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Perception is power. They perceive it as a move of audacious strength. They think you are either a madman or a genius with some hidden Terran power they cannot comprehend. Either way, you have made me relevant again. You have given me leverage. Jace's head was spinning. This was a nightmare. A surreal, geopolitical nightmare. So, he said slowly, what happens now? Now, Iskra said, a dangerous light in her eye. I accept. Jace's blood ran cold. You accept my accidental, drunken, career suicide marriage proposal? I accept this strategic alliance, she corrected him, her tone sharp. Your catastrophic cultural misunderstanding is my opportunity, and you, Jace Keller, are now my instrument. She gave him a smile that was all sharp edges. Congratulations on your engagement, human. I hope you enjoy the honeymoon. The honeymoon, as Iskra had so chillingly put it, was not a trip to a beachside resort. It was a conquest, a royal tour of the vassal clans to secure their loyalty before the political ground she had gained could crumble beneath her. The absurdity of the situation was a dizzying weight as he stood in the main courtyard of the palace. Iskra, clad in burnished dark red armor, swung herself onto the back of her mount, a lava hound, a massive 6-legged reptilian beast with overlapping plates of cooled magma for hide and smoke snorting from its nostrils. It was magnificent. It was terrifying. It looked like it ate smaller planets for breakfast. And then there was Jace's ride. You have got to be kidding me, he said, staring at the creature assigned to him. It was a multi-legged cargo hauler, a biological pack mule that looked like a drunken engineer had tried to build a spider out of spare parts and industrial rust. It had too many knees, and its head swiveled with a disconcerting, rickety motion. His name is Stumbles, Iskra said without a trace of irony, reining in her lava hound. He is sturdy. He looks like he's perpetually on the verge of falling over, Jace countered. And I think one of his legs is on backwards. He will keep up. The words were a command, not a reassurance. The journey began. Iskra's lava hound moved with a powerful, ground-eating gait, while Stumbles lived up to his name, lurching and swaying behind her like a mobile pile of scrap metal. The landscape was a brutalist painting of jagged peaks, rivers of fire, and planes of black volcanic glass that crunched underfoot. "So," Jace called out after an hour of miserable, lurching silence. "This is nice. It's very scenic. Does your planet have any other colors besides black and red and imminent death orange?" Iskra glanced back, her expression unreadable. "Our world is forged in fire. It breeds strength." "Right, my world is forged in recycled paper and lukewarm coffee. It breeds a strong desire to not be on a planet that is actively trying to kill you." "You are soft," she stated, turning her attention forward again. "I prefer ergonomically sound," Jace shot back. "We value things like not being on fire and chairs with lumbar support. Call me crazy." She didn't reply. They rode on, a mismatched pair venturing into a hostile land. The warrior princess on her mythic beast, and the cynical bureaucrat on his collapsing insect donkey. It was, Jace thought with a deep, weary sigh, going to be a very, very long honeymoon. Their first stop was the fortress of Clan Rogorok, a jagged citadel carved into the face of a black glass cliff. Its leader was Warlord Taggart, a matriarch known for her belligerence and a particular disdain for the royal house. They were met in her throne room, a cavern reeking of stale ale and aggression. Taggart was even bigger than Captain Vorn, her armor pitted and scarred from 100 duels. She sat on a throne of sharpened volcanic rock, flanked by guards whose weapons glowed with barely suppressed energy. Taggart's eyes swept over them, dripping with contempt. "The scarred princess," she sneered, her voice a gravelly rasp. "And what is this? A soft-shell pet you found to pledge when no warrior of honor would?" Jace saw Iskra's hands clench into fists at her sides, but her face remained a mask of cold fury. "Warlord Taggart," Iskra said, her voice dangerously level. "You will show my consort the respect his station demands." "Station? He has the station of a fool. He's weak, a mockery. How can you hope to lead the clans when you bind yourself to that?" She gestured dismissively at Jace. "I have come to accept your pledge of fealty," Iskra said, ignoring the jibe. "You will have my fealty when you earn it in the ritual circle," Taggart growled, rising from her throne. "You and me. Now. Unless your little pet wants to fight in your place." Iskra's hand went to the hilt of her blade. "I will reclaim my honor myself." Jace watched, his mind racing. A duel was Iskra's world, not his. But he was her consort, her ally. And he was a bureaucrat. His weapons weren't made of forged steel, they were made of rules. And he had done his homework. While Iskra stepped forward, preparing for the duel, Jace cleared his throat. Loudly. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm and carrying. "Warlord Taggart, a point of order before the ritual bloodshed commences." Taggart shot him a look of pure venom. "What is it, little snail?" Jace held up his datapad. "I couldn't help but notice the power source on your Honor Guard's plasma repeaters. The EM7B conversion cell, a fine choice for stopping power, but unfortunately, a direct violation of the Guttural Free Trade Accord, Section 9, Subsection B, which prohibits the use of military-grade hardware manufactured with non-bonded synthetic crystals from the Altair system." Taggart stared at him, bewildered. "What?" "Furthermore," Jace pressed on, his voice gaining the confident, droning cadence of a master auditor, "the armor plating on your flankers appears to be a composite alloy, containing more than the 0.05% of restricted neodymium allowed under the Galactic Compact's Non-Proliferation Treaty of 78. I have the form right here. Sanctions would include the immediate seizure of all non-compliant assets, retroactive tariff levied against all clan trade for the last 5 fiscal cycles, and a potential blacklisting from the interstellar shipping guilds. He looked up from his datapad and gave Taggart's chief aide a thoughtful look. These fines alone would bankrupt your clan for a generation. It's a mountain of paperwork. You'd be filing appeals for decades. The aide, who had been sneering moments before, was now staring at Jace with wide-eyed horror. He began whispering frantically in Taggart's ear. The warlord's focus, once laser-sharp on Iskra, was now fractured. She was distracted, confused. Her rage diluted by a sudden, terrifying wave of logistical dread. It was the only opening Iskra needed. She moved like a blur of dark red steel. She didn't go for a killing blow, but to disarm. 2 precise, devastating strikes sent the warlord's massive axe clattering across the stone floor. But Taggart was no mere brute to be felled by a single trick. With a roar of pure fury, she snatched a wicked-looking dagger from her belt. Taggart lunged, a bull-like rush of armored fury. The smaller blade, a vicious blur, aimed at Iskra's gut. Iskra met the charge, parrying the main thrust with her own longer blade. But Taggart's wild momentum carried through. The tip of the dagger slashed across Iskra's forearm, scoring a clean, hot line through armor and flesh. Iskra didn't flinch. The pain seemed to only focus her. Before Taggart could recover for a second strike, Iskra trapped the knife arm, twisted with brutal finality, and then drove the pommel of her own sword onto Taggart's temple. The warlord crumpled. Iskra stood over her, blade at her throat. The throne room was silent, save for Taggart's ragged, pained breathing as she clutched her throbbing wrist. "Do you yield?" Iskra's voice was cold as the starless space between galaxies. Taggart, dazed and utterly defeated, managed a choked, "I yield." Iskra sheathed her weapon and turned, her gaze meeting Jace's across the room. She gave a single, almost impersonable nod. It was a shared victory. One won with a blade, the other with a subsection. That night, they made their camp in the shadow of a slow-moving lava flow. The sky was a bruised purple, streaked with the angry orange glow of the planet's molten heart. The air was cool for Pyrethia, which meant it was merely hot enough to bake bread. Jace watched Iskra as she tended to her armor, her movements economical and sure. She had a small cut on her forearm from the duel, a clean slice that she ignored with stoic indifference. Wordlessly, Jace rummaged in his diplomat's field kit. He pulled out a small, sterile antiseptic wipe. He walked over and held it out to her. She looked from the wipe to his face, her expression guarded. "It is nothing." "It's a potential vector for infection," Jace said, his tone matter-of-fact. "And it would be a shame to survive a duel with a 7-foot-tall battle-axe enthusiast, only to be taken out by a microscopic organism." She hesitated for a moment, then took the wipe. She cleaned the cut with a quick, sure motion. The gesture was small, practical, devoid of pity. He was a colleague ensuring a partner remained combat effective. The tension that had existed between them since the proposal seemed to ease, replaced by a quiet, shared space. "You were a bureaucrat today," she said, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. "You fought with rules." "It's just what I know," Jace admitted, settling down on a rock near the fire. "Not as flashy as an axe, but it gets the job done. Sometimes." "No one has ever fought for me like that," she said, not looking at him. She was staring into the fire, but her focus was somewhere far away. "They either fight to claim me, or to protect their honor through me. You just made her position untenable." "She insulted you," Jace said simply. "And you're my strategic partner." It was an inefficient allocation of her political capital. Iskra almost smiled. "Is that what you call it?" She finally turned to look at him, her scarred face illuminated by the firelight. "Those scars you see, they are not from an honorable defeat. I was leading a vanguard against a guttural nest. My second in command, a rival from a jealous clan, gave my plans to the Hive. It was a trap. She betrayed me to the enemy for a chance at glory. I was the only one who fought my way out. Jace was silent for a long moment, processing the weight of her admission. The files had said it was a failure. They hadn't said it was a betrayal. So, your people don't see a survivor. They see a reminder of the day they were made fools of. They see a failure made flesh, she confirmed, her voice flat. It is easier than admitting one of their own was a traitor. Jace looked at this fierce, proud warrior, shrouded in loneliness. My people, he said, his voice laced with a familiar cynicism, don't value strength or failure. They value compliance. I was good at my job. Too good. I automated half the sector's reporting procedures, making 3 senior attaches redundant. I streamlined trade routes, which cut into the kickbacks a well-connected corporate liaison was receiving. I was effective, and for that I was branded a troublemaker and reassigned to the most undesirable post in the known galaxy. He gestured around at the volcanic wasteland. Welcome to my reward for competence. Iskra looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. She saw not a soft shell, but a fellow exile. Someone punished for the very qualities that defined them. So, she said, a dry, brutal humor entering her voice. We are a pair, then. The scarred and the subversive. The beast and the bureaucrat. Jace felt a genuine smile touch his lips. I think I prefer the diplomat and the dame with the disintegrator-proof décolletage. But we can workshop it. For the first time since he'd met her, Princess Iskra laughed. It was a short, rough sound, like rocks tumbling down a mountainside, as if the mechanism for it had rusted from disuse. And Jace decided, right then and there, that getting her to do it again was a new primary directive. To continue their honeymoon, they needed supplies. Untraceable, off-the-books gear that couldn't be linked back to the royal house. Iskra led him to a black market operating out of a network of geothermal caves, where steam billowed from cracks in the rock, and the air was thick with the scent of sulfur and illicit commerce. It was here they met their crew. Their first recruit was a Cheetic, a multi-limbed arms dealer with an exoskeleton that shifted from metallic green to deep violet, and a voice that sounded like 1,000 tiny clicks translated into perfectly sassy, idiomatic standard. Princess Iskra and her human accessory, Cheetic chirped, her large, dark eyes taking in Jace. Heard you crashed Warlord Taggart's party. Good for you. The armored old hag has been squeezing my supply lines for years. You need weapons, shields, a small tactical anti-gravity mine that only detonates when it detects self-righteous monologuing. I've got a special on those. We require discretion, Chitwick, Iskra said, and a long-range comm scrambler. Discretion is my middle name. Well, actually, it's but discretion tests better with my client base. While Chitwick haggled with Iskra, Jace noticed a large blob that pulsed with a soft, unwavering light in a corner. It was gelatinous, bioluminescent amoeba, easily the size of a small hovercraft. It communicated through modulated light patterns and low-frequency hums. What is that? Oh, that's Gloob, Chitwick clicked. He's a bard from the Milladadian Slime Pits, chronicler of epics. Jace's universal translator, a standard-issue diplomatic model, flickered as it tried to parse the creature's emissions. Suddenly, a voice filled his ear, smooth and rhythmic, with a definite beat. Yo, yo! Check the mic, 1-2, it's the slime divine. A story's brewing, a hero's design. The scarred one and the soft shell, a tale bold and new. For my epic saga, you two will have to do. Jace blinked. Is my translator broken? No, Chittik said. Stuck on the colloquial poetry setting. Some freighter captain thought it would be funny. Now Gloob here can only speak in that. He wants to join you. Says your quest has mad legendary potential. Before Jace could protest, another figure caught his eye. Standing perfectly still against a cave wall was a decommissioned siege automaton. It was massive, all thick armor plating and heavy-duty actuators, but its chassis was covered in delicate, hand-painted flowers. And him? Jace pointed. Unit 44, Chittik said. We call him Petal. Decommissioned warbot. His last owner was a lonely freighter stoker who gifted him a poetry database before he got spaced. Now he wanders the galaxy, seeking enlightenment and composing haikus. As if on cue, the bot's optical sensor glowed red. Its voice, a deep, synthesized monotone, echoed in the cavern. A human observes. His structure appears unsound. A flower might wilt. Iskra finished her dealings with Chittik and walked over. They wished to join us. A rhyming blob and a poetry-reciting killbot, Jace said, deadpan. Our chances of success just skyrocketed. We're now officially the weirdest armed rebellion in the galactic history. Petal the bot swiveled its heavy head to look at Iskra. Her quest is worthy. A poem written in great deeds. I will guard the verse. Gloob pulsed a series of bright, enthusiastic colors. The crew is assembled, the fellowship tight. Gonna rock this volcano morning, noon, and night. The bot, the bug, the blob, the human, the queen, the baddest damn posse the galaxy's ever seen. Jace pinched the bridge of his nose. Fine, he sighed. But if he starts doing slam poetry during a firefight, I'm not responsible for what happens. They made camp a few nights later, their strange little entourage a pocket of bizarre camaraderie in the vast, hostile wilderness. Petal stood silent guard, occasionally murmuring a new haiku about a particularly interesting rock. Gloob provided a softly glowing rhythmic light show, humming a low-bass ballad about their journey so far. Jace was cleaning his datapad when he noticed Iskra flinch. It was a tiny, almost impersonable movement as she shifted her weight. He'd seen it before, a slight tensing of the muscles around her shoulder whenever she moved a certain way. He looked closer. Near the complex joint where her pauldron met her breastplate, nestled deep in the scarred tissue that the armor didn't quite cover, he saw it. A tiny glint of metal. A piece of shrapnel no bigger than his thumbnail, that our healers must have missed years ago. It was embedded just deep enough to press on a nerve every time she extended her arm. A source of constant, low-grade, agonizing pain she'd clearly lived with for years. He didn't say a word. He didn't want to make a scene or offer pity. Instead, he walked back to Stumbles and retrieved his diplomat's kit. Beyond just paperwork, the kit contained a set of delicate tools for fine, detailed work repairing sensitive electronics and cracking microseals on classified data briefs. He returned to the fire and knelt beside her. "Don't move," he said softly. She tensed, her hand instinctively going to her dagger. "What are you doing?" "Performing unscheduled technical maintenance," he replied, his voice calm and steady. He held up a pair of fine-tipped, magnetized forceps and a micro-optic scanner. "There's a foreign body compromising your chassis' operational integrity. Needs to be removed." She stared at him, her one good eye searching his face. She saw no pity, no revulsion at the scarred flesh, only a focused, professional calm. The same calm she'd seen when he dismantled Taggart with a trade accord. This was his strength, not in swinging a sword, but in careful, deliberate action. Slowly, she relaxed her hand. She gave a single, sharp nod. Permission granted. His touch was surprisingly gentle. He used the scanner to map the shrapnel's position relative to the nerve clusters, his brow furrowed in concentration. His fingers, which she had assumed were soft and useless, moved with an incredible delicacy and sureness. He worked in silence, his breath a steady rhythm. The pain that she had carried for so long, a constant, sharp companion, was the focus of his entire world in that moment. With a final, minute twist of the forceps, he extracted the sliver of metal. It came free with a faint, wet click. The relief was instantaneous, a wave of warmth spreading through her shoulder where the hot spark of pain had lived for years. He placed the jagged piece of metal on a cloth. "There," he said, his work complete. He began packing his tools away. "Preventative maintenance complete. I'll file the report in the morning." Iskra watched him, a storm of unfamiliar emotions swirling inside her. No warrior had ever offered her such care. Their touches were rough, for sparring or for passion. They saw her body as a weapon or a prize. Jace had seen it as a system in need of repair. He had tended to her wound not as a moment of weakness, but as a logistical problem to be solved. The act was more intimate than any touch she had ever known. It was a gesture of profound, practical respect. He saw the damage, and without a word, he fixed it. He didn't try to fix her, just the thing that was hurting her. And in that moment, the fierce, emotionally armored princess realized her strategic alliance with the human bureaucrat had become something else entirely. Something deeper, more dangerous, and infinitely more precious. They were 2 weeks into their campaign, having secured the fealty of 3 more minor clans through a combination of Iskra's martial dominance and Jace's bafflingly effective bureaucratic warfare, when the message arrived. It was an urgent comms packet from the capital, delivered via Chitik's encrypted network. Jace decrypted it on his datapad. The rest of the crew gathered round. The message was from one of Iskra's few loyalists in the court. The news was grim. The Queen Mother's fire fades. She will not see another rotation. The clans at court smell blood. Warlord Tyra from the Iron Peaks faction has all but declared herself the next queen. But the second part of the message twisted in his gut. It was an intercept of court gossip, a transcript of what was being said in the halls of power. "They call you the Scarred Beast, my princess, and the human. They say he is the soft fool you tricked into a vow because no true warrior would have you. They laugh. They say he will run the moment he sees a real battle, leaving you more shamed than before." Jace glanced at Iskra. Her face was granite, but he saw it. The flicker of pain in her eye. The slight tightening of her jaw. Her mask of indifference, so carefully maintained, had cracked. The words, cruel and dismissive, had found the old wounds, the ones no tool could extract. He saw her shoulders slump, a millimeter of movement that felt like a collapsing mountain. Later that night, the weight of it all pressed down on Jace. He watched Iskra from across the fire, saw the way she held herself apart, the renewed wall of isolation she'd built around herself. The court's gossip had been a poisoned dart, and he was the poison. The soft fool she tricked. He had been a novelty, an unexpected political tool. But now, he was a liability. A walking, talking symbol of her desperation. They were right. He wasn't a warrior. What would happen when they returned to the capital and faced down Warlord Tyra and her legions? He'd quote regulations at them? They'd laugh and incinerate him. And her with him. His presence, his accidental vow, was making everything worse for her. He was a stain on her honor, a joke that undermined her gravitas. He was the problem. And Jace Keller, at his core, was a problem solver. He had to remove the variable. He had to remove himself. He framed it as a cold, logical, tactical decision. The most direct way to protect her was to disappear. Quietly, so as not to wake the others, he moved to his pack. He pulled out the transponder. It wasn't standard diplomatic issue. That would trigger a dozen alarms and inquiries. This was a sleek, unmarked device he'd traded 3 cases of Aldebaran whiskey for in a back alley on Millendanus Port. A piece of covert, off-the-books gear for situations where plausible deniability was key. Official channels were for getting into trouble, not for getting out of it. It was a one-use, no questions asked panic button. His finger hovered over the activation stud. He would leave a note. Explain it was for her own good. That his removal from the political equation was the only logical move to secure her position. It was the right thing to do. It was the only thing to do. He was protecting her. That's what he told himself as his thumb pressed down. "What are you doing?" The voice, cold and sharp as obsidian glass, cut through the night. Jace flinched, snatching his hand back from the now-activated transponder, which was emitting a faint, subsonic pulse. Iskra stood there, a silhouette against the dying fire. She must have been watching him the whole time. Her arms were crossed over her chest, her face an unreadable mask of shadows. "I'm recalibrating my locator beacon," Jace lied, his voice sounding thin and weak, even to his own ears. "You are a terrible liar, human," she said, stepping into the light. Her eyes burned with a cold fire he had never seen before. "That is an extraction transponder. You are running away." "No! I'm executing a strategic withdrawal," he corrected, falling back on the familiar comfort of jargon. "My presence here is a detriment to your political objectives. I'm a vulnerability. By removing myself—" "Stop." The word was a whip crack. "Stop hiding behind your words." She took another step, her voice dropping to a low, furious growl. "They got to you, didn't they? The whispers from the capital, the soft fool, the scarred beast. You finally see it. You see me as they do. A monster. An ugly thing to be pitied and then abandoned when it becomes inconvenient." The raw pain in her voice was a spear in his gut. This was worse than any anger. "I do not need your pity, Jace Keller," she seethed, her hands clenching at her sides. "I have survived the scorn of my own people for years. I have endured their revulsion and their whispers. I thought you were different. I needed an ally, not another coward who flees at the first sight of ugliness." Her words dismantled him. Coward. Ugliness. She thought this was about her scars. After everything, she still thought he saw her the way everyone else did. All the sarcasm, all the layers of cynical detachment he used as a shield fell away, burned to ash by the heat of her fury and his own dawning, horrified realization. He hadn't been protecting her. He'd been insulting her in the most profound way possible. "Ugliness," he said, his voice raw, stripped of all artifice. He turned to face her fully, his own anger rising to meet hers. An anger born of frustration and a fierce, desperate need to make her understand. "Iskra, is that what you think this is all about?" He took a step towards her, closing the distance between them. "I have spent the last month watching you ride a goddamn lava beast across a planetary hellscape. I watched you face down a warlord twice your size and break her with nothing but contempt and a sharp piece of steel. I watched you rally the broken and the bizarre to our cause. You are the most terrifying, competent, and stubbornly alive person I have ever met." He was standing right in front of her now, looking up into her stunned, furious face. "If you think, for 1 second, that I give a damn what your face looks like," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "then you haven't been paying attention." And then he did the only thing that made sense. He reached up, tangled a hand in the rough fabric of her tunic, and pulled her down to him. He kissed her. The kiss was no gentle exploration. It was a collision. A desperate, frantic press of lips, born of frustration and revelation. It was the taste of ash and passion, the feeling of unyielding pride meeting pure, terrified sincerity. For a heart-stopping second, she remained rigid, a fortress of shock and disbelief. Then, something inside her broke. Her hand came up, not to push him away, but to cup the back of his head, her armored fingers pressing against his skull as she kissed him back, pouring all her loneliness and fury and dawning impossible hope into the embrace. Kaboom! A blinding flash of plasma energy erupted from the edge of their camp, striking a nearby rock outcropping and vaporizing it into a cloud of glowing dust. Jace and Iskra sprang apart, hearts pounding. Standing 20 feet away was Petal, the poetry-reciting battlebot, a plasma cannon smoking on its shoulder. Its monotone voice echoed in the sudden silence. Biosignature anomaly detected. Elevated heart rates and pheromonal output consistent with pre-combat threat assessment. Executing threat neutralization protocol. It paused, its optical sensors swiveling between them. The danger is gone. 2 figures are standing apart. The night is quiet. They arrived at the capital to the sounds of a city holding its breath. The air in the great hall was electric, with the promise of violence. Warlord Tyra of the Iron Peaks, a hulking matriarch whose armor was festooned with the teeth of slain beasts, stood before the empty throne, her personal guard arrayed behind her. The other clan leaders were armed, their factions squared off, the throne room a powder keg waiting for a spark. Then, the great obsidian doors swung open. A hush fell over the hall as Jace and Iskra walked in. They moved as one, 2 halves of a single, functioning weapon. She was the edge of the blade. He was the calculating hand that aimed it. Behind them, their misfit crew filed in, a bizarre and intimidating procession. Chitik, her upper 2 arms crossed, clicking with anticipation to see her rivals taken down a peg. Gloob, the gelatinous bard, pulsing with a triumphant light, already composing the climax of his epic. And Petal, the siege automaton, its optical sensor glowing a baleful red, a walking, poetry-spouting mountain of death. The scarred princess returns, Warlord Tyra boomed, her voice full of contempt. And she brings her pet human! In a circus of freaks! You are too late. The Queen Mother's fire is gone. The throne is mine by right of strength. The throne is hers by right of blood, Jace said, his voice cutting through the tension. He stepped forward, his data pad in his hand. He felt Iskra's presence at his back, a solid, unwavering wall of support. He was no warrior, but this was his battlefield. He launched into the most masterful, diplomatic bluff of his life, built around a terrifying kernel of truth he'd gleaned from a classified pre-assignment briefing. Warlord Tyra, he began, his voice the calm, reasonable tone of a man delivering a death sentence. Let's talk about the Gorgon wastes, specifically the trilithium deposits the Terran Geological Survey quietly confirmed there last year. You know, the ones the Galactic Compact is extremely interested in. A murmur went through the assembled clan leaders. They all knew the Compact's predatory interest in resource-rich worlds. Jace was weaponizing their deepest paranoia. As we speak, Jace continued, a formal motion is on the docket in the Galactic Assembly, Motion 7 Gamma 4, to declare Pyrethia an unstable proctorate under Article 7 of the Compact Charter due to chronic internal strife and an inability to maintain sovereign control. The motion is currently stalled in committee. He let that sink in. A civil war, he said, looking around at the armed factions. The messy, public slaughter of half the planet's leadership would be considered definitive proof of instability. It would guarantee the motion's passage. The Compact's pacification fleets would arrive within a month. Your clans would be disarmed, your territory sectioned off, and sold to corporate mining interests. You won't be warlords. You'll be foremen. If you're lucky. A skeptical warlord from Tyra's faction scoffed. Lies! The Compact would not dare! We are a sovereign! He was cut off by a soft, hissing sound. Iskra had drawn her ceremonial dagger. The blade, forged in the heart of a volcano, glowed with internal heat. With a calm, deliberate motion, she rested its searing tip against the palm of her own gauntlet. The metal hissed and glowed brighter, the smell of superheated steel filling the air. Her voice was quiet, yet it carried to every corner of the hall. He is my consort, the Prince Consort of Pyrethia. She looked at the skeptical warlord, her eyes promising swift annihilation. Interrupt him again, and the last thing you see will be your own ashes. The combination was devastating. His soft power threat of bureaucratic annihilation and her hard power promise of immediate personal violence. It was a 1-2 punch that shattered the warlord's aggression, replacing it with a cold, terrifying calculus. Fight each other and lose everything to the compact, or bow to the woman who now wielded not only the blood right, but the most unpredictable and dangerous weapon of all, a human who fought with the galaxy itself. Warlord Tyra stared, her bravado evaporating. She looked from Jace's unwavering, confident gaze to Iskra's burning dagger and the silent, menacing warbot standing behind them. With a growl of pure frustration, Tyra slammed a mailed fist to her chest and bent one knee. I recognize the bloodline, she bit out. One by one, the other clan leaders, faced with a no-win scenario, followed suit. A wave of kneeling warriors spread across the Great Hall. They bent the knee not just to the scarred princess, but to the unlikely, terrifying team she had become. The silence that followed was thick, with shock and the bitter taste of surrender. No one knew what to say or do. The old order had not just been defeated, it had been rendered obsolete by weapons it didn't understand. Into that stunned silence, a low, rhythmic humming began, accompanied by a series of softly pulsing, triumphant purple and gold lights. Jace closed his eyes for a brief second. He knew what was coming. Gloob, the gelatinous bard, swelled with creative energy. Jace's translator kicked in, filling the cavernous hall with a voice smooth as polished stone and twice as confident. This whole court's a relic. I can smell it. The air is diseased, a palace of static, packed with problematic fanatics who stare and appease. Your vision of power's a sledgehammer, frantic and cheap, but you're just a footnote. The chapter I skip when I read 'em to sleep. Y'all saw a marred face, missed the art and case deep behind it. Judge the soft shell, you missed the cold hell that designed it. Two exiles ignited, a puzzle you couldn't complete. You want a tyrant? Psh, you got the beast and the priest. She brings the raw steel, the fury that's searing ya. He brings the cold text to cancel the jury and hearing ya. A footnote assassin with a paragraph's venom, rewriting your future the second he read 'em. Her blade had you mesmerized, locked in a trance of the pain, while his logic dropped fine print acid rain. He dismantled your power with surgical treason. The blade is the sentence, the book is the reason. So let the ink spill, let the chronicle state it. This ain't a new kingdom, it's a symbiotic hatred, a mind for the mayhem, a blade for the heart you hold dear. The fire needs parchment to focus the fear. Your ironclad armor, it's completely obsolete. Your whole dynasty's rendered delete. Capiche? The blade and the tactician. A legend is born from the scorn, a new covenant inked on a document torn. So bow to the syndicate, the reign has begun. The age of the blade and the book have become one. A fresh wave of bewildered silence fell over the kneeling warlords as Gloob's final rhyme echoed away. They had just been defeated by galactic law, and now, apparently, were being celebrated by a rhyming blob of light. It was the final, disorienting confirmation that the universe was far stranger than they had ever imagined. Iskra, however, didn't look bewildered. From the corner of his eye, Jace saw the faintest hint of a smile touch her lips. Later, the chaos had subsided, replaced by a tense, grudging peace. Jace and Iskra stood in the quiet solitude of the royal spire, looking out a massive window at the sprawling, lava-lit capital below, their city. He was still a coffee-addicted bureaucrat in a wrinkled uniform. She was still a warrior princess, her face and soul defined by the scars she bore. Nothing about them had magically changed. They hadn't fixed each other. They had simply made room for each other. building something stronger in the spaces between their broken pieces. "All right," Jace said, pulling out his datapad. "First order of business. I've drafted a preliminary 12-point plan for agricultural reform and cross-clan trade normalization. We'll start by addressing the tariff imbalances and then move on to water rights arboration for the southern wastes. I project an 18% increase in overall stability within 3 fiscal quarters." Iskra placed a hand over his datapad, stilling his fingers. "That sounds incredibly boring." He looked at her. A slow smile spread across his face. "Yeah," he admitted. "It kind of is." "I have a better idea," she said, a dangerous, familiar glint in her eye. "The head of the Merchants Guild, Lord Grant, has been price gouging the outer territories for years. He thinks his wealth makes him untouchable." "Does it?" Jace asked, intrigued. "Not anymore," she said. "I think the Queen and her prince consort should pay him a visit. A formal state inquiry into his trade practices." "An inquiry," Jace said, the smile widening into a grin as he slid his datapad away. "With a potential audit component?" "A deep, invasive, and painfully thorough audit component," she confirmed. "And a large, silent robot who writes poetry about dismemberment." He laughed, a real, unguarded laugh. He looked from her scarred, beautiful face to the city spread out before them, their future. He was a million miles from a civilized desk job, betrothed to a terrifying alien warrior, and backed by a crew of rhyming, poem-spouting misfits. He had never felt more at home.